everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. Ever step outside and the weather just changed on you? That's why I love my Columbia jacket. It's lightweight, packs easy, and goes anywhere. I've got to tell you, I've traveled between all kinds of climates in the same day, from a brisk but sunny day to falling snow. Columbia's tech features like OmniHeat Infinity make sure I'm ready for anything. Seriously, it's engineered for whatever adventure comes next. So if you're ever worried that your child is just not a reader, or just quietly falling behind, this conversation will speak right to your heart. In this episode, Dr. Andrew Vassell, or Dr. V as he's known by many, he's an educator, children's author, and literacy consultant, and 2023 Teacher of the Year semifinalist. He will be joining us to talk about what really helps underachieving and discouraged readers find their footing and their voice. He draws from more than 2 decades in the classroom and his own journey navigating a learning disability. Dr. V shares how diverse, relatable stories can change how children see themselves and what simple things families can do at home to build confidence, competence, and a lifelong love of reading. This is certainly a topic that's near and dear to my heart, so I'm so happy that you came to join me today. Dr. V, welcome.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Sure. So you have been in the classroom more than 20 years, teaching in various settings, urban classroom, suburban. So what first opened your eyes to the depth of the literacy gap that we're seeing in students?
I would really have to say it's the lack of resources that we see a lot of times that some schools actually have. In particular, the early childhood experiences that kids have. Some of them may not have had that experience. So you can imagine kids coming into school not having or possessing those particular pre-reading ready skills and stuff, and find it challenging for some kids to actually catch up, because if you don't have those particular skills prior to coming to school, it could be definitely a challenge.
So you're definitely talking about then resources at home, not resources in the school that are lacking.
Talking about resources at home, and actually sometimes, especially in my experience in urban education, is the lack of resources that some of the schools have.
Okay.
Sometimes it may be, of course, when we look at the socioeconomic status of some kids, in particular for home, they may not be able to go to the library or get books on a daily basis, which I've seen in some households. When I was working in urban education, as well as just the quality of high instructional quality that some teachers may get. I know that in some school districts, there's some limits on that. And so some of these teachers are going in there and basically, working with what they got from their undergrad. And so that could also be very challenging. And then, of course, sometimes it's a matter of the literacy support that some teachers don't get from home. Because sometimes some parents may not know how to best support their kids in literacy.
Now, are you saying then that really the education the teachers get at the bachelor's level really doesn't go deep enough with reading, or?
In my opinion, sometimes it is, because for me, especially for my undergrad, the things that I was learning, the pedagogy and things that I learned was basically just for like on the surface, more or less of, you're thinking about like, you're this teacher, brand new teacher, and you go into a classroom and you have classroom management, you have all these different things that you are focusing in on. But then it's like, well, what do you do when you have kids that are behind? Okay. And not just like two, like not just one grade, but two or three grades behind, it can be
Mm-hmm.
very challenging because sometimes those particular skills that we got in undergrad may not be able to help support that. So, and that's one of the reasons why for myself, I thought that for me, when I first started teaching and I was having kids, in fifth grade,
Mm-hmm.
that are two and three grades behind, but we're
Wow.
supposed to teach them on grade level.
Right.
It's like, how can you support a kid, that is two grades or three grades behind
Mm-hmm.
on that particular grade level? And
Mm-hmm.
so that made me kind of think like, how can I better support my students? And so that's when I went back
Okay.
and, got my master's degree in, literacy and reading.
Mm-hmm. And so, based on that, you're going back to get that deeper knowledge. What are some things that you wish parents really understood about how kids actually learn how to read?
I think it's more or less of the exposure. We have to expose our kids to literacy. I think that one of the things that for kids at a particular young age is that if we see our parents or people that are around us reading,
Mm-hmm.
it's like that modeling for them.
Mm-hmm.
I know that in my household, my parents were both readers. I remember seeing my father sitting at the kitchen table reading the newspaper,
Mm-hmm.
or he was reading in the den, as well as my mom, who was actually an avid reader, with her profession, her reading was more or less of her entertainment,
Okay.
from outside of the job,
Right.
something to just kind of just relax and be able to just, go into a book and read it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the exposure that not only for myself and my brothers, that's what we received and got, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so I think that for a lot of times, my parents didn't take us to the library as
Mm-hmm.
often, but we had a library in our house.
Right.
And I think that that was very crucial for us too, because, I know that my parents used to stock our library so that we could actually go in there and find books to read.
That's so important. It really does make a difference. And studies have shown, right? I guess
Yes.
that it has an
Yeah.
impact on your children's vocabulary and what they can.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
As well as just modeling a good habit.
Yes. And I think that that's one of the things that I, from my experience, have just seen is that, there are some parents out there who do want the resources and want to know how to better support their kids with their early literacy development. But sometimes there are those limited resources, and sometimes we just tend to not want to ask. And
Mm-hmm.
there are some parents that feel that, they're not sure how they could better support their children
Mm-hmm.
in literacy. So it can be more or less of the gap in terms of the generation of how kids were taught. I know a lot of times we see sometimes that some parents will be like, well, that's not how I was taught, compared to like nowadays, like for example, we look at spelling,
Mm-hmm.
and to me, my parents and everything, that era was more or less of like how we spell, and spelling is more or less of just rote memory. You just got to remember how to write it and
Mm-hmm.
spell it. But then you ask a child maybe 3, 4 weeks later on, spell it, they usually forget, you
Mm-hmm.
know, a lot of times. And so for me, I really focus in on vocabulary,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because vocabulary is a great way to help assist kids in their reading development. Uh, if they understand the meanings of those words on the
Mm-hmm.
page, really actually helps with their comprehension.
Mm. Okay. So you hear a lot about how, in general, adults even,
Hmm.
just don't read the way they used to. And it's kind of across the board, like reading books, right?
Hmm.
I'm not talking about social media.
Hmm.
So, with that said, I was wondering whether you also see sort of children lagging behind even in the suburban areas just because the habit of reading might not be the same. the
Yeah,
resources are there where they theoretically should have plenty to read, but maybe they don't have the example. I'm just curious about that.
I think it's more or less of the interest too of
Hmm.
kids that read. Kids that have been exposed to literacy on at an early age will actually be able to tell you like their favorite authors. Like I've had kids that sit there and they will tell me who their favorite author is, and they're very much avid readers. But what I've noticed is, and especially like in the suburban district areas, what I find is that, parents are more they want to see more words on the page. And
Mm,
so I remember back in the day, graphic novels, okay,
okay.
was a thing.
Okay.
And some parents didn't feel comfortable with graphic novels because it
Hmm.
kind of reminds them of a picture book. You see the
Right.
pictures, less words and everything of that nature. So parents were like, "Well, I'm not really into that."
Hmm.
But if you are focusing in on reading development and those strategies, you can definitely still use a graphic novel. Now, what you're seeing right now is a lot of famous authors who have written chapter books are actually coming out with graphic novels. For
Hmm.
example, Kwame Alexander, crossover. A lot of his books are coming out graphic novel series. The other one that I'm thinking of is The Giver.
Mm.
That's another book that actually was coming out in a chapter book. But what I'm finding, A Wrinkle in Time. That's the other one I was thinking
Oh,
about.
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So Wrinkle in Time, and actually it was interesting. I in one year when the chapter book came out with The Wrinkle in Time, I read it with my students, and then I kind of I assessed them on it, and they did fine on it. But what I found out was we also did the graphic novel. And when we did the graphic novel, I saw the kids actually did much better with the
Hmm.
graphic novel than
Okay.
the actual chapter book. And I think that it stems from a lot of, I think this generation, and this is just my opinion, I think this generation the imagination. Like when we get
Hmm.
a book and we read it, um,
Right.
we have to get that sense of that imagination, like
Hmm.
depicting what the author is saying. But see, I think nowadays with the kids with the social media and on the devices,
They're
they
told
lack
what
that.
to imagine.
Yeah, they're told to imagine, and they don't. They lack that imagination,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so it can be very challenging. But like when they read books they love graphic novels. They're more engaged because they see the pictures and it kind of they're more focused on
Right.
actually reading it. So, yeah.
Hmm. Now, how does your experience shape the way you talk to children who feel behind or just not seen in the classroom?
I think that, early on and, from my experience as an educator, one of the things that I do is I think trust is a big thing with
Okay.
kids.
Mm-hmm.
Developing trust with kids is important to me. So every year, prior to the school year,
Mm-hmm.
I usually call parents up and I talk to the parents. I formally introduce myself
Mm-hmm.
and I find out their child's strengths and their weaknesses. If
Mm-hmm.
I have an opportunity to talk to them, I will. And so that's one way that I actually not only build a trust in the parent, but I also build
Mm-hmm.
a trust in a child. And so from there, it's a matter of really truly understanding your students. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you understand your students and what motivates them, it makes it easier for you to better support them in the classroom. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, for example, this year, I had a student where a parent said to me that, my son really loves coming to class.
That's
He
wonderful.
really likes coming to your classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I'm his first male teacher, and
Oh,
of course he, it looks, I look just like him.
all right.
So he's very motivated and he's
Mm-hmm.
driven.
Mhm.
And it's really kind of reflected on this young man's scores too,
That's
because
wonderful.
he's not only does he see somebody that looks like him, but he also sees somebody that really truly values him
Mhm.
and wants the best for him. And it's also helping kids out to be more what I call personalized learners. So they're
Yes.
more they see the growth that they're performing and doing, and when they
Mhm.
see that, they want more, and they know that
Right.
they're capable of doing it, and so it gets to that point where they feel comfortable with their own ability. So that's one of the things that I try to do as a teacher is to build that trust up, but I also tell them my story too as a learner and someone who had a learning disability.
Mhm.
And so I always come back around with the same saying to them that, I struggle too.
Mhm.
And, so if I'm able to stand in front of you with the highest degree for education, what's your
Mhm.
excuse?
Right.
And I tell them that, we have to, I tell them that, no, I have two sayings. We encourage, we don't discourage. And my key thing is we have to kind of persevere.
Mhm.
Big
Mhm.
word that I like to say is persevere. We want
Right.
to work smarter, not harder.
Right. Right. Well, in addition to educating in the classroom, you also have written books. And what experiences or what stories have inspired what you've created, and the characters and the scenarios in your book?
My students,
Mm,
especially when I was in urban education, my
mm,
students used to come to me and talk to me about some of their issues that they
mhm,
were having.
mhm.
And so I remember those. And so
Were there any common themes?
especially like with identity,
Okay.
self-worth,
Ah,
um,
okay.
self-awareness,
Hmm.
feeling a certain way. And so, I thought that what better way to be able to, tell their stories is to
Hmm.
actually write stories about experiences. And one of the things I think that being an educator as well as an author,
Hmm.
as an educator, we always talk to our kids about being able to make personal connections with either the author or with the characters in the story.
Yeah.
And so what I'm finding is that, through my book, and through this series, it's definitely going to help support kids with making connections on a social emotional learning aspect of, wow, just through my experience that I've had with kids now that have come to me and said, hey, Dr. V, I really enjoyed reading your book because, and then they tell me and share their
Hmm.
story. And, this is why I tell them that, it's also another great way for them to explore writing
Hmm.
because, again, your teacher is not only your teacher, but is an author too. And where did I get my stories? I got it from my students. So you also have a voice too.
Yes, and as I'm hearing you talk about the impact that you're having as a teacher and the books that you have created that really reflect back what these students live and experience, the characters look like them. I'm wondering, what are you thinking? How are you feeling right now with this? These book bans and all of that, particularly of books that affirm and uplift people of color, and that's being discouraged now. Those.
Yeah, it's it was challenging,
Mm-hmm.
per se, because I had to I had to pivot, and that's one of the things that, when we see things are happening, we have to actually pivot.
Mm-hmm. How did
But
you have to pivot?
with the language,
Ah,
DEI, and it's more or less of the fact that, my book focuses in a lot on both, aspect of that as well as social emotional learning.
okay.
But I know that in schools, we focus in a lot on social emotional learning. And
Mm-hmm.
so that these are books can actually be a great resource for teachers
Mm-hmm.
to be able to use in talking about topics that they may not feel comfortable talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But for the kids that look like me,
Mm-hmm.
we all have these identity issues
Right.
within even our own culture
Mm-hmm.
of how we feel about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the things that I wanted to kind of make sure that people know that, my series is not all about color. It's not about
Mm-hmm.
color. It's
Right.
about how kids feel in particular situations that
Mm-hmm.
affect them.
Right.
For example, with the Black Crayon, self identity is such a big topic nowadays
Mm-hmm.
for kids. And so one child may have a self identity issue that is totally different from somebody else.
True.
And so they can actually come together. And so, like, one of the things we do as teachers is we have morning meetings where we go around and we, have a topic to talk about. And so, this is a great way to be able to open up conversations with kids about self identity, and what experience have you had in that field, and how did you feel? And
Mm-hmm.
kids are able to kind of share about it. And then next thing you know, one kid hears a story that's like, hey, that's similar to my situation. I had
Right.
this happen. And so that's what it is. It's more or less of getting that talk, getting that
Mm-hmm.
conversation to start. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's one of the things that I really pride myself on, is being able to create something where kids are going to be able to have conversations, but
Mm-hmm.
also have something that they can take away, a
Right.
life lesson that they can actually take away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, how many books are in your series?
There's going to be 10.
Okay.
So, yeah, so the Black Crayon is out right now.
Mm-hmm.
You can get that on Amazon, or you can get it actually Barnes and Nobles, or you can actually get it in Kmart.
Okay.
Um, yep, or you can actually,
Kmart. This is still
yeah,
Kmart.
yeah. Or is it Kmart or Walmart?
Walmart. Okay. I
Oh
was
my
gonna
goodness,
make
there we
this.
go. I'm like, oh, I'm showing my age. Oh no. Yeah, I know it's
So,
some Mart, Walmart.
yeah, that's
So,
really good. And
yeah.
so, what have children been telling you about the Black Crayon,
Uh,
or their
they
parents even?
parents have been the, very pleased and very happy.
Okay.
In particular, the kids in my classroom. It was really nice because I had a lot of the kids come to me and they're like, "Oh, Dr. V, sign my book," and I'm like,
Oh.
"Okay." So, just signing it, and I think it's more or less of the resource that
Mm-hmm.
providing for parents, because you're not within the book.
Mm-hmm.
You also at the end get questions that are asked, that parents can ask their kids. And throughout my years, I remember reading stories, and there weren't questions at the end. And so what I
Okay.
did was I was like, well, let me write a series of questions that's related to like standards that we have,
Mm-hmm.
that
That's a good idea.
parents could ask. So
Mm-hmm.
they have that. And then I thought after a while after the book, I said, well, I also want to be able to help support teachers as well as parents if they are reading their book to their child and stuff. And I wonder what I can create there. So I created a workbook that has
Okay.
like activities to help support that, and it actually talks about which standards it supports.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was another thing. So, and then
That's
of
a good
course,
idea.
the coloring book, which is a fun activity that they can do, and,
Mm-hmm.
color it, and show their own creative side. So I created this bundle deal where, you get three. You get the book, you get the workbook, and then you get the coloring books. All three things, all three phases that you have in there to actually help support a child with their reading development, or just, having that support that parents could have. Because
Mm-hmm.
what I found out was, I did an event and I only had a few of the workbooks. But what I was finding was that a lot of parents were like, "Oh, do you have any more workbooks?" And I'm like, "Oh
Right.
no." I was like, "You can get," and they wanted that support. So I was like, I was telling my wife, I was like, "We gotta get more workbooks,
Yes.
to do
Well,
this." So it was a
yeah.
need that they wanted because they were just like, "Hey, I really want to help my child out. So this is a great resource to have." So.
Hey parents, are you looking for a fun way to spark your child's love of reading? Check out the I Can Read Book Club, now available at Highlights. With exciting stories arriving at your door every month, your little reader will build confidence while discovering the joy of independent reading. Plus, each book is designed for early learners, making it easy to grow skills at just the right pace. Want to inspire a lifelong love of reading? Just click the link to get started with the I Can Read Book Club at Highlights today.
Well, yeah. And as you were talking about your workbook, I was thinking about those parents that are standing by and just trying to figure out how to help their children that are 2 and 3 years behind, as you said there.
Hmm.
So, what can they start doing to support them, but at the same time, not shame their children? Uh,
Sure. So I wrote down something, and you want to keep it simple, effective, and you want it to be realistic.
mhm,
So you definitely want to be able to read to your child every night,
mhm,
10, 15 minutes a night. You also want to kind of focus in on the sounds. You also want to focus in on vocabulary.
mhm.
For the older kids, you definitely want to do read alouds, allow them to read to you, but also what we call a reading response,
Okay.
which is after they read, you could actually ask them to summarize what they read. So I
Mm,
always like to kind of use this graphic organizer. Somebody wanted, but so then. So it kind of helps them to kind of be able to summarize the chapter of whatever they're reading. And I think it's just more or less of the keeping the routine or implementing the routine of literacy throughout the day with a child, the exposure of it.
mhm,
I think that one of the things that I did early on was I did surveys to find out
mhm,
what reading interests kids have.
mhm,
And so once kids find out what their reading interests, I always share with them, like, well, you could do this for entertainment, but you could also work on developing those reading skills that you need to improve
mhm,
through genres that you enjoy reading.
mhm,
And so, it's so important to be able to model for those kids in especially reading and giving them those reading opportunities to be able to read every day,
mhm,
and be able to build their vocabulary. I think that one of the things that I tell parents and I tell kids, if there's a book that, or if there's a word that you may not know
mhm,
on the page,
mhm.
jot it down.
Right.
And then, write it down and then keep yourself like a little notebook and then you stick them up anywhere that you see. Like kids that are studying like, vocab words or just words
Mhm,
that they want to know. I tell them to put them up in their bathroom because,
mhm,
you'll out of sight, out of mind. You see it more often wherever you go, you see that word. Or, if you're sitting down and reading, you write words down on your flashcards. And whenever a commercial comes, start looking at your words for a little bit, and then when your show comes back on, you put them away. So
mhm,
the more
mhm.
exposure that kids have,
Right.
the better off it's going to actually help them
Mhm,
because so many kids that I've seen that when they see the growth that they can actually do, they
mhm,
are more motivated to sit there and want to improve their literacy development.
mhm, mhm. And I was also going to ask you to talk about like what difference it seems to make when children see themselves represented in the books that they're reading and recognizing themselves and the characters.
Oh, definitely. When I read the story to my students, they shared with me some of their experiences that they've had with identity. One student shared with me, you know, he just this is his second year in the district,
Hmm.
but he was coming from Boston, you
Ah.
know, and so it was kind of a struggle for him because he's down here and he's around all these Eagles fans, and so these kids were like, "Oh, Boston, they're Patriots," and they were just saying all this stuff, and
Hmm.
it was hard for him like to fit in.
Right.
But he told me, he said, what did it was there was this one kid that, was in my class, and we were out at recess, and he came over to me. He's like, "Hey, you want to play?"
Hmm.
And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And he said, and he talked about that moment, like, and that kind of really helped him. Like he
Hmm.
felt like he fit in because despite everybody saying because he was coming from another state and he
Hmm.
had another team that he supported, someone was so nice enough to sit there and offer him to come and play, and that sort of like kind of changed everything for him.
Hmm. And how about how what you're seeing about the differences with when they are reading the books that show people of color or people that characters that have the same situations that they're experiencing. What are you noticing about them with
It,
reading?
it yeah, it actually helps them actually really to connect better with the story. So when I was doing my doctorate work, I did a capstone project, and so
Hmm.
one of the things that I did was I asked my administrator to put 12 students of color in my classroom, boys.
Okay.
And so my study was based off of looking at alternative methods to help improve students of color's literacy development
Okay.
through genre studies and author studies.
Okay.
So what I did was, in the beginning of the year, I actually did an author study of Kwame Alexander, and they realized that looking at his interview that at first he was into reading, and then his parents kind of forced him to do certain things, and he just after that he just didn't like reading anymore, but he loved
Mm.
poetry.
Okay.
And so that's what kind of brought him back to the love of books,
Okay.
because of his style that he writes. It's
Hmm.
less, and he talks about that. It's less words on. He says you see all this white on his in his books. You don't see a
Right.
lot of ink, and he's and his creativity, but he still
Hmm.
puts all the elements of poetry in it. And so what I found is like those boys were really interested in the story because, for one, a lot of them were interested in basketball, and so
Okay.
crossover talking about the two twin brothers, and so
Hmm.
they were really engaged because not only was it a topic or an interest that they liked, but they also saw an author that actually looked like them. And
Okay.
so what I do is I really try to expose kids and let them know of color, of different authors of color. Jason Reynolds is another
That's
one who's
good. Hmm.
great.
Hmm.
Goat, so exposing them to those particular authors and listening to them, because a lot of times, like I said, it's making those connections,
Right.
and that's the thing, and some
Hmm.
of these authors who are of color can
Hmm.
definitely connect with their audience, especially with the kids.
Hmm. That's good. Now, I know beyond your books, you also offer writing workshops and reading workshops. And I wonder what kinds of questions or worries do you hear most from families when they talk about literacy or their children's reading?
I think it's mostly some of the kids that my struggling readers is it's more or less of, oh, they don't like to read as much at home, or they don't like to read.
Right.
And that's like the biggest thing that I kind of hear is like, how do I get my kids to read? Well, if they find out what types of genres that they're interested in reading, I
Hmm.
think that you will find that they will be more engaged in like reading. And plus, you have to be a little bit more creative. I sat there And I've told parents this. I said, there's a lot of kids, of course, that love playing games.
Hmm.
They like playing, their PlayStation 5 or their Xbox.
Hmm.
A lot of times we don't know that there's that store called GameStop, and there's a magazine that
Oh,
has like stuff that kids can read about how do you get past this certain level if you're stuck
okay.
on it. So I was like, oh well, that's another way to read. You can get
Sure.
that magazine and have them read that magazine and then find out and talk to them about, hey, well, how did you pass that level? Oh, well, let me tell you how I passed. Well, that there we go. That's reading. So you have to
Right.
kind of look at different things
Hmm.
that kids are like into,
Hmm.
and then you can actually find a way to get them to actually read about something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, really showing them that reading is it's really an access to
Hmm.
their dreams, what they want to know. If there anything they want to know, any question that they have, they can find that answer in a book.
Definitely. And I think that the more that they're exposed, I think that one thing that I have just seen throughout my years is that
Hmm.
it's so critical for kids, especially in the early stages, to get those pre-reading ready skills. Because what we find out is that those kids that are 2 or 3 grades behind in whatever grade, they're
Right.
lacking those skills that they were supposed to develop at a
Hmm.
younger age. And what we find out now is that some curriculums that are invented now, they are supporting some of those skills, even at an upper elementary or middle school level,
Right.
supporting those particular skills that the kids lacked, in their
Mm-hmm.
early primary ages.
Wow. Well, so for parents who are listening or watching and they want to raise strong, confident readers, what are some daily habits they could practice right now to help make a big difference and help in just creating lifelong learners, people who always they read for enjoyment, they read for information, but they just feel confident that when they need answers to questions, they know that they can read books and other media to get their answers.
I think that one of the things that for me personally, and I can say through my own experience, I think that trust is one big thing as a parent is that you want to develop that trust of your child. And a lot of times, and what I mean by that is you want them to be able to come and talk to you about anything, which my
Okay.
parents, I was able to go and I could talk to my mom. And I'm going to be
Hmm.
honest, I could talk to my mom. I couldn't really talk to my dad. And
Okay.
the reason why I would always go and talk to my mom was because my mom, she listened to understand. She
Okay.
didn't listen to critique or say anything like that. She listened to understand.
Hmm.
And when she listened to understand, I felt validated because like,
Okay.
okay, she's really listening to what I had to say. And so because of that, it allowed me to be able to go to her and even talk to her about real issues or problems that I was having,
Hmm.
whether it was personal or whether it was academic.
Right.
So, a lot of times we need to just listen to understand
Hmm.
because if we are so quick to say something, then we lose our children a lot of times. And then they don't want to come and talk to you about, and this is what I also find out too as a teacher, you
Hmm.
know, my kids talk to me a lot about a lot of stuff.
Right.
And why do they do that? Because they trust me and they
Hmm.
tell me certain things and then I make a suggestion. And like I'll give you an example.
Okay.
So when I was in Philadelphia,
Hmm.
I used to have a lot of students that would come to me and they would talk to me about one parent in particular, their father.
Okay.
And their fathers were absent and never around. And
Hmm.
in particular, one of my students, their father was incarcerated.
Okay.
And this student was very upset
Mm.
because father was in and out.
Okay.
And I was like, you ever write to him?
Mm.
No, 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 no. I was like, well, why not? Well, I just, I, so I
Hadn't
said,
thought about it
yep,
probably.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, let's role play. I was like, if I was him, what would you say? And it just all came out.
Mm.
And what I got from that was that at sometimes at these critical stages that some kids need, they need their parents. And like whether it's both parents are in the house or whether it's one, they need that parent. And what I found out is that a lot of them, you know, the materialistic things, the buying of the clothes, the buying all that stuff, they really didn't want all that. They just wanted time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, at that stage, all they wanted was that parent's time. And then
Correct.
eventually, as they get older, if that parent's not giving them that time, then
Mm-hmm.
it's you've lost them. And then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, now it's more or less of like, what can you give me? And then that parent realizes like, oh, I realize I want to, spend some time. And they're like, oh, nope, you had your opportunity. I'm content with where I'm at right now. So, you lost that opportunity. And I've seen that a lot, but I
Mm-hmm.
tell kids though, when they're feeling like that, they need to journal or they need to write. They need to write to
Yes.
them and let them know like how they're feeling right now and
Mm-hmm.
tell them like I need you right now. This is why it's so important for you to be I need you right now because these things are happening to me. And so
Mm.
that student actually did do that. And I was like, well, how'd you feel? I was like, I felt really good about that. And I was like, well, at least
Mm-hmm.
you were able to get it all out.
Right.
Now they know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to them. You left it on the table for them.
Right. So it sounds like you feel like it's just really important to connect with your children and communicate with your children. And
Communicate.
then I guess then you can kind of integrate reading into that. I mean, they can see you reading. You can read with them, every
Yeah.
night, like you said earlier.
Yeah, it's more or less of the connection first, the understanding, because then you can start implementing and having those various routines that
Mm-hmm.
you can put into your everyday life with your child. Like for example, I used to I read to my kids every night.
Right.
That was just something that that we would do.
Right.
And so now it's getting to the point where, it's more or less of you don't read alouds, you read to me and stuff. And then I ask questions.
Right.
Okay. You know, I was just doing my reading tip Tuesday today. And since the holidays are coming up, I
Mm-hmm.
gave a little tip. I said one of the tips is holiday recipes. You can have your
Mm.
child read those instructions on how you do your holiday recipes. And most families have these little holiday recipes that they like to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, have your child read it,
That's
you
right. And
know?
you can kind of take care of reading and math in that
Yep.
case as
Yep.
well with the
Yep.
measurements.
Yep. But it's more or less of them actually, hey, come on and help me out,
Hmm.
and just the exposure or
Right.
going to the library. I know I do see a lot of parents nowadays going to the library and getting their kids a library card. That's great.
Yes.
But I also see parents going on a weekly basis and going to the library on a weekly basis
Yep.
and that exposure of that. But it really is the more that you put them in an environment where literacy development is there, it's
Hmm.
really going to make a difference for them.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes. Well, how can we keep up with the work that you're doing?
Sure. So my website, which is drandrewvassal.com,
Okay.
and you can definitely go on there and you can actually see where you can actually purchase my books, but also you can actually see my services that I offer.
Hmm.
But one of the things that I want to just say thank you for giving me this opportunity
Sure.
to be able to talk to parents. But I feel like one of the things that I want parents to know is that I'm a resource.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have questions, if there's things that you wanted to know about, you can always inquire.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that from a standpoint of talking to some parents, I think that from a cultural standpoint, a lot of our parents don't know their rights and what they
Mm.
can do,
Okay.
especially from a school district level on how to better support their kids. So
Okay.
you definitely want to be aware of your rights and to be an advocate for your child,
Mm-hmm.
especially if there's things that you see in your child and in their development. You definitely
Mm-hmm.
want to inquire about it and ask questions
Mm-hmm.
because that's what usually happens. A lot of people, when they see certain things are happening with their child or they are aware of it, they
Right.
want to inquire about it and find out. Whereas we don't
Sure.
want to there fall back and not say anything, go, oh, they may be just going through something. No, I want to know for sure. So I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I like that you're saying that because so many times you have parents that feel that from 9 to 3 or whatever the hours are now, uh, the school has responsibility for their children. Whatever happens during those hours, that's their problem and they should settle it.
Mm-hmm.
And that they don't recognize that there really are partners
Yeah.
with
Yep.
the administrators as well as the teacher, and your student is also a vital part of that
Yes.
partnership as well, because I just think it's so important for children to be active consumers in their education.
Yes, definitely, definitely. I think that the school home community, it definitely needs to be united
Mm-hmm.
as a front to be able to help support a child. So that means that whatever they're learning in school
Yes.
definitely needs to be supported at home. But
Yes.
we also have to give those parents those particular types of resources on
Yes.
how to be able to help to support them at home.
Right. And reading is just so foundational to everything else.
Yes,
So yeah, so it's wonderful with the work that you do, the trainings and the learning sessions that you have. Do you do them at your school too, or are you invited out to do this for other?
I'm invited out to do things,
Okay.
but like I said, it's more or less of getting the word out,
Okay.
and definitely like the voice
Mm-hmm.
behind the person. And so, I want to be definitely an advocate for myself and trying to get parents to know more about who I am and how I can better support.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because again, I was someone who had a learning disability, but I was
Sure.
able to overcome that and persevere and get through it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do understand what that struggle is,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to literacy development and learning.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know how to be able to kind of motivate kids to sit there and see their worth so that they are capable of doing it because of through my own experiences I was able to do that. And I think that that's one way to kind of help support kids is seeing someone who at that particular time and stage right now is going through that, but someone who persevered through it and got
Mm-hmm.
through it is now coming
Yeah.
back to help support, kids that struggled just like he did.
Right, right. And I think it's just so important for parents at home to pick up that part at home and, continue, extend that, being good role models themselves
Hmm.
around reading, but so many of them need the tools. And so that's why, I was asking, I'm hoping that your own school, as well as others in the area, are taking advantage of your knowledge and resources to give parents some direction and not feeling so intimidated like, I'm not a teacher, but they are their children's first teacher. And with the right resources,
Yes,
like,
definitely.
from someone like you, I think that'll make a difference.
Definitely. So I just also wanted to say too, coming out in March will be my book number two, which is going to be actually the Blue Crayon. And the Blue Crayon actually focuses in on mental health And
Okay.
so how we use mindfulness to help kids out that are
Mm-hmm.
dealing with depression and
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, which is another issue that we see a lot now happening with kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's great. It kind of dovetails with the first one, which the Black Crayon is more about identity.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Dr.
Thank
V.
you. Hmm.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in and caring so deeply about your child's growth and confidence as a reader. And if this episode encouraged you or gave you some fresh ideas, it would really mean a lot for you to just take a moment to like this episode, share it with another parent who needs the encouragement. And by all means, drop your comments below. Let us know your takeaways. And please subscribe to the Parenting 411 podcast so you never miss these crucial conversations. And your support helps this community grow and brings these helpful voices to even more families. So thank you again for tuning in. And until we meet again, remember that it's never too late to be the parent you want to be. Can't wait to talk to you again next time. Thanks.
We bring you this episode for the purpose of information and entertainment only. It is not the intent or purpose of the Parenting 411 podcast or Carol Maletta to provide an exhaustive reference or guide on all aspects of parenting, child care, and family life. You are strongly encouraged to read all available information, consult medical or other appropriate professionals, and pursue all reasonable means to learn as much as possible about parenting to complement what you gain here, and then tailor the information to meet your individual needs. Yes, parenting is a serious matter, though it is not an exact science. The context and insights offered in this and every episode represent an account of knowledge and personal experiences of the host and any featured guests for the viewers' and listeners' information and consideration. The host and guests do not guarantee to our viewers or listeners any specific parenting outcomes from this episode or taking actions described here.